when I tour, I have my package of stuff that I tour with, which is the drums, the microphones, Shure microphones, and the Yamaha 01V96 mixer. And that, the mics and the mixer are as part of my setup as the drums and cymbals. And the only thing that was not a constant was the monitor speakers that I was putting all of this through. And it's been something that I've been wanting to find the speakers that I could actually really feel good about and endorse and be able to use as part of my rig and have it be part of my sound. I had tried a bunch of other speakers and on the road where you get speaker du jour and you get a bunch of different stuff. QSC was I had an opportunity to try a few of them along the way, and they always stuck in my mind as something that I wanted to check out. But with my crazy schedule, I never have time to do anything. So last year at NAMM, I really made a concerted effort to check it out. And I have to say too, in asking sound engineers and live sound reinforcement guys, hey, where do I look? What's the company that I should be checking out, and what's the speakers? Hands down, QSC was always in the top 5 at least, and very high on the list of ones to check out. So I made a point just to stop in and introduce myself at NAMM, and Brian English sort of became the representative, and he showed me a few things at NAMM, but it really wasn't until I could go down to Costa Mesa, a little bit later in the month, and take a bass drum down there, and because it's really the toughest thing for sound reinforcement for drummers is being able to find a system that has the power and that can handle the sound pressure of the kick and the low end. And that's always generally the issue, and it always has been the issue for me when I'm on the road, is that usually systems just don't have the low end capability. At that point, I really didn't know what I was going to use. And I was just mixing a record, actually, from Tom Kennedy's record last year. We were mixing it here, and I had just gotten the masters done and finished with the project. And here in the studio, I was used to the sound. I know what it's supposed to sound like, and we got it sounding like I wanted it to sound. And so we plugged in a mix to some of the speakers down at Costa Mesa, and I think the 15s were the first thing that we plugged them into, and it sounded like studio monitors. I couldn't believe it. It was so high fidelity, and usually you plug in something to a live speaker rig, and some tuning has to happen. I didn't find it was very, very realistic sound, and I was like, wow, well, these are pretty cool. So the next test was to go lift them, see how heavy they were, because if I'm going to be carrying them around or somebody else's, weight is always an issue, 15 sounded great, but they were a little big for what I really needed for my monitoring rig, because I use in-ears anyway, but my monitor situation is a little bit different than most. I use the monitors really only for the drums, so that they're on stage the same representation of fidelity, not so much volume, but can be too, depending on the band, but more about the fidelity of the sound of the instrument. I want it to match what's going on stage, so that that's the whole thing. So the 15s were impressive, and but they were kind of heavy and big. So it's like, Brian, what else you got? I was like, normally 12s don't handle it for me. I always have to have, at least a sub, or, 12s by themselves really don't do it. And he's like, well, check out the KW series, So the KW 122s, we plugged them in and sounded like high fidelity speakers as well. I was blown away. I couldn't believe how great they sounded. I lifted them up, and they're, they had a little weight to them, but in generally speaking, they weren't that heavy. So I said, okay, let's, next test is to actually plug in a mic, set up the kick drum, and see how these things sound, just plugging in this speaker here, 2 of these guys by itself, with the bass drum, was almost enough. The settings on the back of the speaker, there's a roll off. If you use a sub, there's the flat setting and there's a bass boost, so that you can actually add a little bit of a more low end. And it was almost enough. And then he says, well, you should check out the sub, the K sub that goes with with them, because then you'll really be geared to handle anything you want to do. So when we plugged in the sub and I ran these guys in parallel, and then so I could do it with two channels. One channel for me would be the sub, and the other one channel would just be these guys in mono, two of them. And I'll tell you, it was immediate feeling of like, wow, this is great. This is what it should be. I didn't have to mess with EQ. I didn't have to do anything. I just turned up the fader and EQ'd the bass drum maybe like I would normally do it, but the system I could tell had enough headroom, and just the fidelity. The sound was amazing, and that was it. That was basically the whole audition process. This was the lightest thing that I could do. That if I was going to carry it around myself, you put the two 12-inch speakers on top of the sub and roll it in. It was pretty easy. And even the sub is not that heavy. So, and I kind of have a cool little setup. I usually put the sub on the floor on the side of me here, and then I put either a case lid or something on top of it, put the mixer on top of that, and then the 212s off to the sides here. So I just dial in that sub as much as I need, a little bit, depending on the band, and it's fantastic. I mean, just it wasn't too long of a process for the auditioning, let's put it that way.